All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Professional Brotherhood podcast. Today's episode, I am joined by Ryan Johnston. Ryan is the owner of Maine-iac Training, located up in Maine, a place that I have fortunately got to visit once before, and I need to get back. I'll just say that. But we could talk about that a little bit more later. Ryan, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to our listeners.
Sure. My name is Ryan Johnston. Like you said, I'm the owner of Maine-iac Training. I've been a firefighter for 30 years total. I've been full-time for 23 and change, so short time before I was able to retire. I got my start in a real small town, Clinton, Maine, and got bit behind the ear by the bug. And man, it's been a roller coaster ride ever since. And it's been some good times and some bad times, but
Yep.
But that's me in a nutshell, man. I'm pretty simple,
Where in Clinton, Maine, volunteer firehouse where you started out?
Yep, that's a volunteer firehouse. I actually still belong there today.
Okay.
I live about 18 miles away from there, but I work a per diem shift every once in a while up there, and anytime they have a good fire, I get in my truck and run up and go have fun at the fire.
Okay.
I volunteer in the town of Oakland that I live in. Currently, I'm a lieutenant here, and then my full-time job is the city next door, and my title is rescue technician, which is a fancy title for almost a lieutenant on some things, but not on everything. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
All right. Sure. I one of the things I've really enjoyed about doing this podcast and talking to people from, different parts of the country is learning some of the differences, in the hierarchy, in how things are done.
No doubt.
It's amazing to talk to people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world for that matter, and just hear the little nuances of
Absolutely.
How things differ from place to place.
Right. I was just talking to a guy the other day, Dave Smith from DCFD,
Mm-hmm.
and another guy, Drew Evans, and they both work for DC. And we were just trying to do some things in-house at my full-time job, changing some titles around, and they have what they call a technician.
Okay.
DC. I don't know a whole lot about it. I got some information from those guys about it, kind of what it takes to get there. So we're kind of trying to slide that similarity into where I work now. So that's kind of neat. I'd never heard of that really before, but it really kind of fits what we're doing in my job. So that's kind of neat stuff.
Okay.
I never would have reached out to somebody like that if I didn't get on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before I hit record, and social media is it's just amazing. I mean, the two of us wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for Instagram. Right. You connect through a mutual person, and you see what somebody else is doing, and and if it intrigues you, you start looking, you start following, and the next thing you know, you're having a conversation, and then you're doing a podcast or reaching out for information.
Yeah, it's crazy. I couldn't imagine where this would have taken me. I've had a couple opportunities now to do a couple of podcasts, and one of the first ones I did was Code 3 with his name escapes me now, but the guy's in LA, and he's on the West Coast. I'm way over here on the East Coast.
Sure.
And he reached out from my article there, and I never would have in a million years imagined that would have happened.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's been amazing.
So, I reached out to you because, our platform, our lane, as I like to call it, is primarily the volunteer fire service. That's where our primary listener comes from, our demographic, as they would call it in big time radio, right? Our demographic. Right. But, following you for a little bit and reading your story, listen to one of the other podcasts you were on, you're still immersed in both worlds, the career world and the volunteer world. one of the things you were talking about on one of the other shows I listened to was, and you've written about it, and I, went through your website a little bit. You teach some classes on it, is shorthanded firefighting.
Absolutely. Yep.
And let's dive into that a little bit, because geographically, it's always interesting to talk to people about, what they have on the job, whether it's on the job career or at their volunteer house, right? It's not all, it's not all the FDNY where they're jumping, we're dumping 50 guys, in the snap of a finger,
Right. No doubt.
A lot of us out there have to get good at doing with less.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that and how that's affected you in your world.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote the article in the beginning, was probably back in 2009. We had and talk about shorthanded firefighting. So I went to the class instructors, and their word that they were talking, their shorthanded versus what I consider shorthanded is obviously night and day difference. If they have 4 guys on an engine and 4 guys on a ladder truck, they consider themselves being short. Where I'm, dancing a jig, man, if I get 3 guys on the ladder truck,
Right.
So, I mean, so that was kind of for them to come to Maine and do that. Great class, great information, but it didn't fit us. And for the next 15 years after that, that's all we've heard in this area is, we need a real shorthanded class. We got to talk about shorthanded. And nobody was doing it. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll do it. So kind of started out here with, the shorthanded aerial. I do have to say that was not my photo in the article. My photos were too blurry, so they come out with a truck from San Francisco. That is one of the things I get razzed about the most, which I guess if that's what it is what it is.
Hey, that's all right.
So that was their picture. But yeah, so they around here, if we get 2 guys on the ladder truck and a couple of people in the engine to start off, we're actually doing pretty well. I would consider us ahead of the game.
Okay.
First say, especially at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in my hometown, if we pull together 4 or 5 firefighters, we are loaded. We're doing well.
Right.
We just went to a fire in a community the other day, and I think there were 2 of us that showed up for the truck, and then 1 or 2 others came and followed us in the pickup truck, and that was our crew. 4
right
back at the firehouse, and so we have to call for coverage to come in.
Sure.
I mean, the fires from years ago when we used to have guys falling off fire trucks, we had a mill in town and they'd let guys go, and you'd leave the doors with guys falling off fire trucks.
Right.
And now we don't have that. Employers aren't letting people go, and it not even getting the people to do that.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole nother topic. Retention and recruitment for the fire service. That's
absolutely. And that's a struggle everywhere. I mean,
everywhere. We're all fighting the same game, the same battle. It's just and the answers are different in every community.
Right.
But as far as the shorthanded thing for us, I was just even in my full-time job, we run 5 guys on a shift, and we show up with 5, maybe 6 fire trucks. And I'll let you figure out how we do that. But no, it's crazy. You get to a fire, and there's all these jobs that need to be done, and none of the jobs go away.
Right.
All the jobs still have to get done, whether it's search, hose lines, you name it, vent, forcible entry,
right,
the whole gamut. We all know what they are.
Yeah.
Everything still needs to get done. And the problems still exist, whether you have to make a rescue or putting the fire out, and which one of these things am I going to do first? So there's a lot of picking and choosing and trying to figure out, instead of being on a ladder truck showing up with 5 guys and I got the irons, I got this, I got that, I got the can.
Right.
4 guys on the engine, I'm the nozzle, I'm this guy, I'm that guy. We don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
So,
And if you do, if you're listening to this and you do have that luxury, regardless of where you come from and what side of the fence you sit on, whether you're getting paid for the job or not, you should
right.
be really thankful.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
Um,
Super thankful.
oh, no question. I started my full-time career in the city of Bangor.
Okay.
I was there for 18 years, and we were either 3 or 4 man engine companies, and 2, sometimes 3, very, very, very rarely a 4-man ladder company. Um, and to do that job for as long as I did, and then to switch here to Waterville, it was amazing. I'd always had the shorthanded thing being a volunteer on the side still, because I never
Mhm.
stopped volunteering. But to go from having 4 guys on an engine showing up and doing what we do to and not that I had to know like one specific job for that seat. We weren't quite that,
Sure.
but it was pretty easy. I knew if I was either pulling the line or if I was the backup guy,
Sure. Right.
depending on what shift I was on, how senior or junior I was, or
Mhm.
whatever. I come to this department that I'm at now with 5 full timers, and I not only have to pull the line, I'm also probably my own backup for a little bit. I got to, start the search at least off the line, or find the fire, force my way into the door,
Mhm.
think about venting, all these things. So if the people that are career or volunteer in a smaller department where they don't get all these people, there's some pretty solid dudes and female firefighters out there, because they have to be.
Yeah.
They have to
Absolutely.
be, I don't want to say better. Better is probably not the best word, but they have to be solid.
Yes.
And you can't hide. You
Well,
can't hide it.
you have to be multifaceted.
Absolutely.
You don't have the luxury of saying, I'm a truck guy,
Right, right,
and I do
right.
truck work. That's
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
guess what? You're going to end
Oh,
up
yeah.
stretching hose today.
Oh, absolutely, dude. I've ridden in the front seat of the tower truck and pulled the first line off the engine.
Right. Right.
Okay. I mean, that's just how it goes.
Yep.
And you have making those choices is okay. Well, I know technically my job should be search. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. I know what that is. But geez, if I go put this small fire out right now, I've solved 90% of my other problems.
Right. Yeah,
And that's not all the time, obviously. You have to make those decisions. And that's where it comes into play of being a solid firefighter,
Mhm.
and having some experience and knowing what to do. Um, it comes down to training.
Yeah, for sure. And how do you think that operating shorthanded, all right, which essentially you're doing most of the time, right,
Mhm.
has affected the tactics, your tactics, or tactics that people would typically think as traditional, right? Right.
Um, yeah, it doesn't, well, it does affect them. It makes them a little more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little more time consuming. So if I'm going to um, expect my people, or if I'm going to be expected to pull a hose line, do a forcible entry, start putting out fire, if there's only 2 or 3 of us there to do it, those jobs take time.
Sure.
So the timing is where it's um, where you're kind of losing out, and I was just reading an article today talking about VES and how we got to get the first line in the door and the firefighters in the window, and sometimes we don't have that luxury to do both. We got to
Right.
pick one. So and that's all dependent. I can't say one way or the other. I'm going to always go in the window. I'm not going to pull a hose line, or vice versa. I mean, I just can't say that. You
Right.
have to be. You have to play those cards when you dealt with them, and do what you think is best based on your training and experience.
Yeah, it's going to be situational.
Yeah.
You're either going for the life or you're going for the fire, but you might not be able to do both at the
Right.
same time anyway.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can think of times when I was working in my full-time department up north, and we pulled up to a couple of buildings, well, a building going with people hanging out windows, and you got an engine and a excuse me, an engine and a ladder there, and you're short that day, so you're 3 on the engine, 2 on the ladder. You just became shorthanded. You've
Yeah.
got literally, we had 3 people hanging out windows. Okay, we've got a fire underneath these 2 and a fire above those 2. Okay, who are we picking? And
Sure.
and it's not just the small 1-man departments that are running into being shorthanded. I mean, there's some, I don't want to call them major cities, but there's some small cities that are running into it as well.
Sure. Absolutely.
But I think, coming back around to it, it really all goes into our training and how we train, what we're doing. I mean, I love going to company trainings at some of the departments I teach at in the evenings. And one of the things I see quite regularly is they'll have 18 firefighters show up for training. Okay, great. So then when they're practicing, or even when we do like a state end test, how they practice it, everybody's there, the lines are already pulled, everything's all ready to go.
Right.
And that once that's done in their main, their firefighter 1 and 2, it never happens again.
Right.
Ever. And that just drives me insane. But that's like, again, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But so we try to, we try to train how we fight, I guess is how you want to say it. We want to hold people back, if you will. I did an extrication class a few weeks ago, and I had 14 or 16 students, and the first thing everybody wants to do is jump in, start cutting doors off cars, and
Sure.
we were doing a scenario based type of deal. And I had 9 or 10 firefighters just standing off to the side watching, and 3 or 4 that were working hard were like, "You're going to send us some help? Are you going to call for help?" Oh yeah.
Right.
So we try to make it as realistic as possible. And by doing that, I've found that those departments are excelling. Whereas before they may have been struggling, trying to go, what are we doing here? So that's been kind of eye-opening for me to see that. Because I was always kind of a proponent in the beginning of, training by the book. If it says we need 3 guys on this hand line, we need 3 guys on the hand line.
Sure.
We need that. But I've noticed more and more of the departments that we're going to teach, if we give them some realistic scenarios and treat it how they would get a firefighter here, a firefighter there, and it seems to be working out pretty well.
And again, you said it, that's reality, because and I heard you mention this, same thing on the other podcast I listened to was about drill night, and bells kind of went off for me as well. Sometimes you just don't think about things, but you're right. Typically on a drill night, you're going to get most of your people out. Those, some of us are shorthanded there as well, but then there's others of us that are fortunate to get, like you said, 15, 20, 25, 30 guys on a drill night.
Right.
And you're right. When you're training, that's not usually realistic for what we're going to do. Sure. If I have a working fire in my district, at some point I'll probably have 25 of my own guys on the scene.
Oh, sure.
But
absolutely.
Probably not in the first 15 minutes.
Nope.
So you're right. Training to that reality of, okay, we've got the crew that got to the firehouse and got on the first engine that day. All right. How are we doing it with that crew?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's been great for what we've been doing. The other thing I try to do too, in one of the scenarios that we will, run, whether it's an extrication or a fire scenario or whatever, especially with the incident commanders, is I also try to, I underwhelm them without manpower, but we also overwhelm them with too much manpower.
Yeah.
Because, in that first 15 minutes, like you talk about, you get your couple, 3, 4, always there firefighters, and you don't get that bigger group. And then, the second alarm comes out, or a second tone, or whatever it is. You're like, oh, the 5 or 6 people that are home going, I don't know if I want to go to this. They start to show up.
Sure.
They may all show up at once. And that can be overwhelming to somebody who doesn't have that luxury of saying, yeah, okay, well, I've got this guy and this guy. Oh, wow, now I have 5 guys. What do I do with these 5 guys?
Right. Right.
And, then you try to start simulating mutual aid communities coming in. And one of the things that I preach is call them early. I mean, in our area, we have a phenomenal mutual aid group. So like if right now there was a fire in the neighboring town, at dispatch, they're dispatching not just that town, but the 3 surrounding towns that are going to it as well.
Okay.
Automatically, if there's smoke in a building or a report of known fire, or if someone signs off of a known fire, the other 3 departments are automatically on their way.
Okay.
And we find that works pretty well for us. And, we don't mind saying, oh, no, we're all good. It was a, malfunction or a stove fire. It's out. Everybody else can go home.
Yeah.
So
it's funny you mentioned that because I had a similar conversation to this today. And again, it's another one of those, geographical, how things are set up. But, and I think that the way you just described it, it's a success. It's as successful as the way that it's laid out. Right.
Right.
Because I know in my area, not really in my immediate county, but in my neighboring county, they do a lot of automatic dispatches.
Mhm.
And one of the companies that falls into both counties um, ended up taking their RIT team out of service because they were going to so many automatic aids for smells and bells that it was burning their guys out,
Yeah.
and they were seeing the other side of it. So
Right.
I think, and the conversation I was having today is, it's all in the setup.
Right.
If you're going to go on every single dispatch structure fire, well, you might be going to a lot of automatic alarms. But, the way you described it as smoke in a building
Right.
or, confirmed fire, that's going to
Yeah,
narrow down your
confirmed.
numbers a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, where you're, if you will, confirms that it's a fire.
Mhm.
Police officer confirms it's a fire. The person on the phone says, "My house is on fire." Yeah, we're
Right.
gonna believe that. And the
Yeah,
dispatchers are
sure.
pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and as an officer in our department, if I hear something that sounds like, geez, that could actually be a fire, or if I know something, like we've been to this address a few times, and every time
Right.
we've been there, it's been something actual.
Yes.
Um, if even if they don't dispatch everybody else, I have the freedom, if you will, to say, yeah, send everybody, let's get them started.
Yep.
And we don't do that very often. So I mean, it's
Right.
and we don't have that many calls that happens. So it's pretty good. It works really well around here.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a firm believer in get it coming and turn it around if you don't need it, and like we said, there's ways to massage that, work that
Yeah.
out. I
Yep.
tell guys all the time when I'm teaching, especially when I'm doing like tech rescue type classes, awareness classes, I say, listen,
Yep.
if you know that you're incapable of doing this specialty, whatever this specialty might be, you
Right.
know that your agency cannot do it whatsoever. And you know that the agency that can is 20 minutes, 30 minutes away. Why are you waiting
Right.
to figure it out,
Yeah.
to get that agency rolling?
We have something similar here too. Like the town I live in, we do a lot of confined space stuff,
Mhm.
but we don't do a lot of high angle stuff.
Right.
So, next town over will take care of the high angle stuff. We take care of the confined mobile trails and a lot of lakes.
Okay.
So in the wintertime, there's 3 or 4 departments that have snowmobiles. If we get a call for a snowmobile or someone crash through the ice, we start getting most in. The summertime, depending on which lake it is, and what the call is, we have boats on lakes. Some of our guys live on the lakes, or the department at the other end of the lake has a boat in the water all the time. We start them early. So it's just all about knowing your resources and being realistic.
Right.
You got to be real about it. You can't just go, we should be all right. We'll see what happens when we get there. And then you're behind the 8 ball at that point. I mean,
Right.
we're already behind the 8 ball anyway.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
why put ourselves even further in jeopardy and put our customers even further in jeopardy?
That's the thing. You end up putting your people, or potentially putting your people, at a greater risk, because what happens is you get there and then that need to act kicks in,
Right.
and and now you're thinking, okay, the department with the boat or the department with the swift water team is 20 minutes away. What can we do before they get here,
Right.
to either make it look like we're doing something, or to actually try to do
Try and
something,
do something.
and you end up putting your people potentially at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No question.
But so aside from um training the way we fight, right?
Mhm.
And utilizing that shorthanded mindset. Hey guys, you're not going to have X number of people on the scene so quickly. So train that way.
Mhm.
One of the other things you said is, being
Mhm.
overwhelmed with people. And
Right.
the scenario I think of there immediately is, that auto extrication where you've got four firefighters that are actually maybe on tools doing work, and then you have
Mhm.
15 just kind of hovering
Hovering.
over the top of them,
Yeah.
doing nothing but really getting in their way.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
how do you work that into the
Well, one of the things I do like to know, what I, especially with extrication, is if you're going to hover in the right spot. Be smart about it. If
yeah,
you see, instead of telling the dude that he's not doing something right, go to where you know it's going to be right when you do it, and he'll hand you the tool, and then you get to work.
right, yeah,
Um, but beyond that, I mean, you've got to take and let those people take that step back, and you got to train them to do it. Because if
yeah,
you do, everybody wants to be up front in the action.
yeah,
We teach leapfrogging in extrication. If I'm using the spreader and I need something cut, I don't just hand the guy the spreader and take his cutter. I step out, tell him what needs to be cut. You know what I mean? And that gives me a break, gets him in there, then it does his thing, whatever. I might even hand up, well, maybe not me, but most people might hand off the spreader to somebody else,
right,
or something along those lines. But um, you've got to train. You have to train them in what not to do as well.
sure,
They if they don't know not to stand 2 feet away, they're not going to not stand 2 feet away.
hmm, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and some listen, you if you're not training that way when you're doing it out in the field, they're going to assume that that's okay. Right.
Absolutely.
They're going to assume that
Absolutely.
hovering is okay, that
Right.
being here, like you're trying to figure out your plan A, your plan B, your plan C, and
Hmm.
you can just feel that person like
Oh yeah.
right
Yeah.
here while you're trying to do your thing.
No
And
question.
if you're not training everybody to say, hey, listen, you know, like you said, be put yourself someplace where you can be useful, but
Right.
you're not being a hindrance.
Right. Right. And a lot of times for us anyway, um, we don't usually have that issue.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, especially on car accidents. It's actually, for me, I think it's better to show up shorthanded to car accidents
Yeah.
to a point. You know, um, maybe it's just because I want to do all the work myself. I don't know, but I like showing up a little less manpower on car accidents
Hmm.
than I would have, typical fire.
Right.
Uh, but I am getting older. I do get tired faster, so I like more people in the fires.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So in your volunteer house,
Hmm.
um, when it comes to your initial response, how do you operate up there? Is it a to the firehouse response and then load the rigs and go out? Is it to the scene response? Is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both for us. It depends on where the call is. Like for me, I carry my gear in my vehicle.
Okay.
A lot of guys keep their gear at the firehouse because they live closer to the firehouse.
Hmm.
And during the day, we have one per diem person there.
Okay.
So it depends on the call, what district it's in, what truck goes first. And a lot of times that truck will just head right to the scene. And then guys coming in will take subsequent trucks after that, depending on the call.
Gotcha.
And then there's probably a handful of us that most of us that do that are officers, and we'll go direct to the scene,
Right.
but not until we hear either somebody going to the station for the truck, or we know somebody's at the station and they're taking the truck.
Hmm.
Because sometimes it turns out that there may be a fire out to the left of my house down the road, but I got to turn right to go to the firehouse to get the truck.
Sure.
So if I don't hear anybody signing on by the time I get myself in my vehicle, then I'm gonna start heading to the station until I hear somebody else going for a truck, or that truck's going in service for the call.
And are you guys doing that all, via radio, or are you using something like
Uh,
a rover and I'm
yeah,
responding or
I am
something like that?
responding. We
Yep.
have
Okay.
that. There's two or three of us that live right in my neighborhood.
Hmm.
So if there's a fire in our neighborhood, We'll quickly take a look at our phone, see who's going.
Yep.
But most of the guys on the other side of town know if it's over here, we're going to go direct. But if they're not home, so we take a look at IM responding, listen on the radio. Not everybody uses the IM responding yet. It's kind of new for us. We've been trialing now for 3-4 months with it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's kind of new for us here.
Yeah, it's a great tool. I mean, we've been
Yeah.
using it for years now, and it really is a phenomenal tool. I mean,
Yeah.
it just gives you a lot of information that years ago you wouldn't have.
Oh,
That you'd be guessing.
Absolutely. Yep.
You'd be guessing at who's coming, who's going where, how
Right.
far out they are.
Yep.
And obviously there's a lot more things that you can do with it as well. But any of those responding type softwares are definitely valuable to what we're doing and what we're talking about here, especially when it
Right.
comes to being shorthanded.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You definitely take a look at that, and and see 3 of you going. You're like, hey, all right, and I haven't heard anybody on the radio. Let's
Right.
start getting more people coming. Let's get the next town over started. And I think as they start using that IM responding as well, like some of the towns around us that do have it, we can see who's on shift.
Oh yeah.
Their department that day, so we know what truck they're sending and who's coming on it.
Yeah, sure.
So that's kind of cool,
Yeah. And listen, I mean, it's all tools for the toolbox, right? I know.
Right.
Look, I'm a chief officer. I typically don't respond to the firehouse, but there have been times where I'm out in my driveway as I'm leaving my house and I've got my phone open. I'm looking at I'm responding and I see 4 or 5 guys heading to the station. I don't see a chauffeur, and I'm like, all right, which way am I? Like you said, am I going right or am I going left?
Right.
And there's been times where I've driven to the firehouse and I'm driving the apparatus.
Yep. No doubt. No doubt.
But these are all tools that they're available to us to help us, do what we got to do and get the equipment out the door. Because
Right.
it's great
If
if
the
we all
trucks
show
don't
up at
get
the
there,
scene.
man, it's you can have all the guys in the world standing outside the house, but if the trucks ain't there, ain't nothing gonna happen.
Yeah. And there is, it's happened to all of us. There is no worse feeling than arriving at the scene of an incident prior to the apparatus, like you with
Yep.
your gear in your trunk,
Yep.
you're standing there all dressed. Boy, that 2 minutes or whatever it takes, like you can put yourself in the homeowner's shoes in that
Oh, yeah.
situation,
No
because
question.
that 2 minutes that you're standing there waiting for the engine to roll in feels
Yep.
like a lifetime.
Oh yeah, no question. No question.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You're just watching the fire grow, going, oh my goodness, what I could do with this, what I could do with that.
Yeah. And they're staring at you,
Like,
going,
do something.
yeah, like, hey, where's, like, why are you here without the fire truck?
Right.
Because the most people, unless they're immersed in this culture, don't know.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yep.
assume that when firefighters show up, they show
Oh,
up
yeah.
with the equipment that they
And
need.
then the all the Facebook posts the next day is fireman shows up without fire truck. When yesterday's post was, why did a fireman show up at my medical call with a fire truck?
Right. Yeah. For sure. So how much are you doing training throughout your state? Pretty much. I mean, I
Yeah,
saw
yep.
looking at your website,
Yep.
and for those that want to check out the website, it's Maine, spelled out like the state,
Yep.
IAC.training.org, right?
Correct.
Maine-iac-training.org.
Yep.
So check it out. But I see you got a whole cadre of instructors. It looks like from a pretty robust area around the state.
Yeah. And actually out of state, couple of guys in Boston do some
Okay.
stuff for us. My buddy in Harrisburg does a lot of stuff for us, especially when we do
Okay.
ladder company stuff. He'll come up, and we're actually going to Ohio a couple times this summer for some classes.
Nice.
Which will be kind of cool. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. We'll go anywhere. I mean, really.
Right.
I mean, I don't care where you call me from Kentucky. I don't even know where it is, man, but I'll get there. Wherever,
Yeah.
We'll do anything, anywhere, anything that's in our wheelhouse, I should say. There's
Sure.
some things that I might teach around here in a small local class that I'm probably not going to go to wherever to do,
Right.
But if somebody calls and asks, I'll either, yeah, I'll come do it, or I'll hook you up with somebody that'll come do it,
And how is the training in the state of Maine set up regarding, like the firefighter ones, the firefighter twos? Is that done by the actual state, by the state fire marshal? But how is it done in the state?
You froze up there for a second.
Oh, sorry. How is the training in the state of Maine done as far as like, your recruit training for, career or volunteer? How do they get that basic, the firefighter one, firefighter two?
Yeah, firefighter one and firefighter two. There's a couple different ways you can get it in Maine. A company like mine can actually put on a firefighter one and two course.
Okay.
But a department can put it on, or the state has a school, usually in the summers, a couple times a year or whatever. They'll also put on firefighter one and two program. And I'm trying to think, they do like at least 2 or 3 a year, I believe.
Okay.
And they run a couple of tests at the end of the year. So like if I had my class, a firefighter one and two program, they run through the program, do their end test with us, and then they go to the state and test for their certification.
Gotcha.
So the state still runs that portion of it at the very least, but
Okay.
they do have state-run academies as well.
Yeah, and look, one of the things that you brought up earlier that is true. Going back to the whole shorthanded thing, and how in training things are always, well, maybe not perfect, but they're set up a certain way because we have to follow. Yeah, because we have to follow certain rules, right? We have to follow the NFPA, and we have to follow the live burn standards and things like that. So, you're not rolling into a structure fire where the engine's parked with the primary line, the backup line laid out, charged, ready to go in the building for you. The fast team's sitting there ready to go.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't happen.
No,
it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. So, regardless of what state you're in or how you get through that skill set and get that certificate, there's so much to be learned after the fact, because that's when all the real life stuff kicks in. Like, how are you going to do this in real life?
Right. Yeah. We do a lot of like when we, not necessarily our firefighter one and firefighter two classes, but like, say we're doing our truck company operations class. So we do forcible entry, search, roof ops, aerial ops, whatever. We try to make that as real as possible.
Yeah.
Without going too far. But the best way to do that for us around here is to find an acquired structure. We have some great training facilities throughout the state. They're building more and more as we speak, actually. But even those buildings, they're limited,
Yeah.
Until you get into an old farmhouse that's 3 stories, 4 stories, whatever, nooks and crannies, and just that's when the real training takes place, and you can really do some good things with that. And that's where these guys really learn what they need to learn to survive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I agree 100%. I mean, and we still do quite a few of them now, but back in like the early 2000s, when firefighter survival and rapid intervention was really becoming a thing, and we were doing a lot of those classes. If we got our hands on an acquired structure that had lath and plaster, oh my God, it was like a dream come true, because you get these guys in there and they'd be so used to banging through sheetrock like it's nothing. You're like, all right, now let's do this, where you're really going to be working.
Yeah. That's when you get into those where they're, there's they're going through the plaster and lath, and then they try to go through. Now that 14.5-inch opening is actually like 12 inches.
Yeah. Rough cut lumber, and yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's an eye-opening experience. Listen, I remember the first time I was put through it. You break through some sheetrock and you'd be like, this is nothing, and I've always been on the slimmer side, so getting through was never a problem for me. But we get into an older house, like you said, with that lath and plaster and real real 2x4s or, and
Oh, no question.
that restricted opening would make a big difference.
No doubt. No doubt.
But yeah, I mean, look, the biggest thing, like you said earlier, is training like you're going to do the job and
Right.
making it realistic.
Yep.
But what other suggestions do you have, when it comes to preparing yourself, your company, for operating in that shorthanded environment? I mean, look, you can take anything and make it shorthanded, right? I
Oh,
mean,
no
we
question.
typically tend to go to the to hose stretches or truck work or extrication, but I mean, you can really take any skill and be like, all right, guys, look, there's only 2 of you today,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I did kind of lose you there for a second. He froze up again, but
Yeah, I don't know. Our connection for some reason tonight.
yeah,
Keeps,
well, I think it's partially mine. I'm in the back room of my house and I'm kind of isolated, so probably part of it. But what was the question again?
No, I was just saying, what other suggestions, ideas did you want to put out there for, people that are listening to this saying, hey, we operate shorthanded pretty much, all the time. And what could we be doing to just keep preparing ourselves for that situation that we know is our reality?
Yeah. I think I'd go back to, training how we fight, and you've got to be able to recognize it and be realistic, try to come up with some realistic solutions based on whatever the scenario at hand is. Don't overthink things, and just try to keep things as simple as possible.
Yeah.
You start making things difficult, and difficulty requires more people, right? If you keep it simple and as simple as you possibly can, that will require less people to do the task. It's like forcing a door. Do I really need 2 people to force a bedroom door going down a hallway? Probably not. But if I'm in a commercial structure trying to get out, I might need 2 of us to get out of that building. You know what I mean? So
sure,
you just try to keep it as realistic as possible. Don't put 2 people on a door that's a bedroom door to force it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best piece of advice I could give, is keep it as realistic as possible and train as realistic as possible.
Yeah. And what about looking at your options as well for how you're doing things? Like, one thing I often talk to guys about is, look, they know they don't have a lot of firefighters showing up. They know that they're shorthanded, but something as simple as, their pre-connects, they're still doing a flat load. And I'm like, hey guys, have you ever thought about doing a Minuteman or a triple layer load? And they're like, well, no, we don't do it that way. I'm like, well, you just got done telling me you're always shorthanded. Why don't you look at some of these other loads, see if they work better for you? Because you might be able to make a 200-foot stretch with 1 guy, whereas now you're killing yourself with 2, know?
Yeah. I fight that battle on a regular basis. And the thing is about that, it's the load itself, pulling it is never the problem. It's never the problem. Right. It's when you're putting it back, and they may or may not know how to put it back.
Yeah.
And that's what they come up with. They're like, yeah, it's a great load. We're glad you showed it to us, but we really can't figure out how to put it back on the truck without this person or that person being there.
Right.
So,
Good point.
You tell them, hey, we're here now. Let's train on this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And listen, the funny thing is that sometimes something that simple can make such a drastic difference in an operation. Huge difference. And guys know, because they've all been there. And I always use the scenario when I'm teaching that. I say, listen, how many of you guys have gotten to a fire, right? You're packing up, and the old timer that isn't interior anymore shows up, thinks he's helping you out, goes to the truck to stretch the line, and dumps the entire line right at the pump panel. Not that he's a bad guy, right? but
Right.
he thinks he's helping you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now you walk around the engine with your pack on, ready to go to work, and you're delayed 3 to 5 minutes because you got to stretch out this mess of spaghetti that's
Oh yeah.
laying at the pump panel,
Yep. Yep.
but meanwhile, you could take a half an hour and train these guys on
How to pull that line.
how to pull that line, or on a different hose load
Yeah.
that they could do by themselves,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yep.
And like you said, you don't want to do it because the person that knows how to put it back on the truck isn't there.
Right. Yeah. Or, the other thing that I may or may not have run into in the last few years, I hear a couple of times is some departments want to put a longer than 200-foot line on their truck for longer stretches. And the thing I get is, oh, that'll never work here. We tried that 20 years ago, or whatever it is. And it's we had a fire a couple of years ago. I actually happened to be driving, and I put the engine where it's supposed to go. Tower driver put the tower where it's supposed to go. And the way they had to fight this fire was go around the Delta to the Charlie side and go up 2 sets of stairs and push back towards the Alpha side. They came up 35, 40 feet short of hose. So now I have to take time, extend their line for them.
Right.
When we've just been talking about, let's put a 300 footer off the back of the truck. Just let's try it. So that day we decided, yep, we're trying it. And we did,
Yeah.
And it stayed on until we did hose testing. And one of the guys that was there is like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. Now let's put this load back on then.
Yeah.
200 feet done. And that was the end of it.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely some arts that have been lost over the years. And some of the stretches, or some of, estimating your stretch is a huge one because everybody is so set on we have a 200-foot cross lay. That's what we got.
Yep.
We got 200 feet. That fire better not be 210,
right,
right. And if it's 50, we're pulling 2.
Yep.
So, yeah. But, like you said, training on how we're going to fight. And sometimes it's as simple as getting the hose off the truck.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But, yeah, good stuff. All right. So the one question I wanted to ask you that I've been asking everybody so far this year, because when we started this whole journey, this whole platform, it was promoting professional volunteerism, right? Doing the job as a professional, regardless of whether you're getting a paycheck for it or not.
Absolutely.
So my question for you is what does it mean to you to be a professional volunteer firefighter?
Well, I consider myself, since day one when I came into the fire service, as a professional volunteer. When I came in, it was something bigger than me. That's one of the reasons that I did this, is to do something that's bigger than me, to give back to my community. So I just happened to get bit by the bug so much that I wanted to do it all of the time.
Sure.
But, even after getting my first career job, I never stopped volunteering. It's something that's bigger than I am, and it's something that I do to give back to my community. We still get paid. I don't even know how much I make an hour. I don't even care how much I make an hour. I really don't. Usually that paycheck goes into a flashlight or something for my fire gear that I don't have, or
right.
Excuse me, but to me it's the honor and the pride and something bigger than self that really motivates me and drives me to stay in. I'm going to retire in a couple of years here, probably, from my full-time job. But I don't think I'll ever stop being a volunteer fireman. And like you said, it doesn't matter if you get paid or not. That doesn't define you as a professional firefighter. It's your actions and reactions that kind of pave that way for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, realizing that there's the one thing that we have talked about, and we talk about all the time, is the job doesn't change. The fire doesn't know the difference between the person that's showing up, the customer, as you mentioned before, the customer has no clue, nor do they care. They just want professional service showing up to take care of their problem.
Absolutely.
As fast as they can.
Yep.
You know, fix my issue and fix it now, because it's, you know, more than likely probably the worst, if not one of the worst days of their life when the fire department is showing up to their home or car accident or whatever it may be.
No
So
question.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Pride in the job, pride in yourself, pride in the service. I love it.
Absolutely.
So tell everybody where they can find you out there on the social spheres and internet and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, what do they call it? Instagram. Yep. I usually say that wrong. I actually wrote it down. We're on Instagram at Maine-iac Training, all spelled out, no hyphens, nothing like that. On Facebook as well. I think it's just Maine-iac Training on Facebook. Our website's www.maine-iactraining.org. If you ever anybody wants any classes, give us a call. We'll go anywhere. We'll do anything.
Awesome.
And we'll do it well. So
good. Yeah, you mentioned Harrisburg. You were talking about PA, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
one of my buddies, the Tower One guy down there.
One of our annual pilgrimages prior to COVID was always the Harrisburg Fire Expo. We would go down there every year. And always a good time, you know, kind of a smaller laid back expo, but I'm ready to, you know, get out of all of this stuff so we can get back to
no question.
Get back to expos and traveling and seeing people and
no doubt.
Not wearing masks except for when you're on Zoom.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
But all right, Ryan, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm glad we connected, and we'll stay in touch and keep getting the message out there. But I appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing your story and talking to us about little shorthanded operations.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you having me.
All right, brother. Stay safe.
Thanks. Take care.